It's Ohio State in NIL, man. It's an interesting situation. When you look at Ryan Day and where he is, so if you're not caught up on him, we talked about it a little bit yesterday. Julian Sayin, the former 5-star Alabama committed quarterback, is now going to Ohio State, and they already have Will Howard, who transferred from Kansas State at quarterback. Devin Brown's still there. We'll see how that ends up. You bring in Caleb Downs, who to me is going to be the best DB probably in college football next year at safety or corner or nickel. Don't call it slot corner. That's a terrible way to put it, and I hate that word. And you look at what they return, but then having C.J. Stroud set up this NIL fund where it's kind of giving back to the university is absolutely brilliant. But is Ryan Day, Andy, because I've said here multiple times, and my question is this, with all this transfer portal stuff that Ryan Day is doing, they took money away from Jim Harbaugh when he wasn't beating Ohio State. They're giving money to Ryan Day to try and beat Jim Harbaugh and Michigan if Harbaugh's still there.
Well, they're not giving it to Ryan Day. They're giving it to the players, which is
you know
better.
what I'm saying. To load up the team for Ryan Day. And ipso facto, right? It's a metaphor, but it really happened. Is this a one-year deal for Ryan Day? Like if you can't on one hand say we can be 1-11, but if we beat Michigan, it doesn't matter. And then say, oh, we're 11-1, but we lost to Michigan now for 4 straight years, which would be the second loss at home. Not saying he would get fired, but would there be a mutual kind of parting of ways, or would Ryan Day look to go somewhere else? Because I tell you what, man, you got to beat him eventually, Andy. It got Shula fired, right? It got Shula fired because he couldn't beat Auburn. That was the only thing. Well,
yeah, you got Tommy Tuberville counting fingers.
Yeah.
That's going to get you fired at Alabama. And it's the same thing at Ohio State. Imagine if social media had existed when John Cooper was the coach. Would he have lasted long enough? I think it was 1-10-1 was his record against Michigan. I don't think he would have lasted long enough to get there.
No, he wouldn't.
And that's the same thing with Day in Michigan. He's got to beat that. Now, with the 12-team playoff and them being as good of a roster as they are, like if you lose to Michigan but then go win the national championship, then you're probably okay. But if you lose to Michigan and have an this team, of course, needs to make the playoff. As good as the roster is, it's got to make that 12-team playoff. But if you just go one and done in the playoff, that's not going to be good enough either. This is supposed to be a team that competes for national titles. They have a roster that should allow them to compete for national titles. I mean, I'm going to go into the season probably thinking this is the strongest roster in college football. Them or Georgia.
Georgia,
too. Yeah. But the defense that Ohio State brings back is going to be elite.
Yeah.
And the question is, can the offense score enough so that when they play a Michigan, when they play a Georgia, when they, see somebody in the playoff who's really good, they got to play Oregon in the regular season in Autzen. Can the offense score enough to make sure they win? And that's the big question. So they bring in Bill O'Brien. So Ryan Day has decided he's abdicating play calling. Bill O'Brien's going to handle that. Ryan Day will do the CEO thing. It's really interesting because they played Missouri in a bowl game. And Ryan Day and Eli Drinkwitz are sitting next to each other on the dais. And Eli Drinkwitz is answering questions about his own decision to stop play calling before this year. They brought in Kirby Moore to call the plays. And Drinkwitz is like, it's the best decision I ever made. It made this team better. I was able to focus on the things I needed to focus on. Kirby handled the play calling. All was well. So if you're Ryan Day and you're just overwhelmed, you can't beat Michigan, everybody wants you gone, and you're about to lay an egg in a bowl game, I think you're thinking, you know what? Maybe I need to overhaul this thing too. And you look at the changes they've made, plus the players they've brought in, it is sort of do it now or don't do it at all. I think there's a saying that involves the phrase "get off the pot" that I would use on that one. So, but yeah, that they've got to be good now, or it's going to be like, okay, maybe this isn't working long term, and they wouldn't fire him. It would just be a case of, okay, here's another job. I'm going to go do that. But I don't know that they're going to have to. Like, I think they're going to be really good.
I mean, they are, Andy. I mean, it's hard not to look at that Ohio State roster with what they've added, even on the defense side, and be like, listen, if you can't beat, because we got to remember, Coney, before I throw it over to you, there's no more divisions in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different circumstances that could happen with Ohio State and Michigan. You could legitimately have a situation where Michigan plays Ohio State 3 times. You really could. But what happens if Michigan beats Ohio State the last game of the regular season, and then Michigan beats them in the Big Ten championship game. I don't know how you get past that. I don't see that happening.
Florida coach Ryan Day, that's what happens.
Florida coach Ryan Day. Wow. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. I like that. That's why we get the stapler on here.
Yeah.
He's putting it together.
Or Bears. Maybe he could fail upwards.
Hey, look, we'll see what that Dr. Seuss named coach does in Chicago, right? Eberflus.
Andy.
And a wiener goose.
Alabama football, Andy. I think they went out and got a heck of a coach in Kalen DeBoer. We've seen sort of this mini mass exodus of players when we talk about Caleb Downs leaving and they lost the number one quarterback recruit in Julian Saying. I think those are just some getting over the humps for Alabama fans are going to have to get used to now that Nick Saban has retired. But they got a really solid football coach in Tuscaloosa. What do you think the ceiling and floor is for the 2024 season?
Well, ceiling's still national title. I mean, you've got a coach who took his team to the national title game last year. You've got a roster, most of which made the playoff last year. You've got the quarterback coming back. You can take this, because if we think about the players who left, and they did have a lot of players go to the portal, but there's still like 64 and 5-star recruits left. Yeah. And oh, by the way, there's more coming, and they'll get more in the spring transfer portal too. They won't be from the SEC because that transfer rule, but they'll get plenty. And then some of this, like Julian Sayin leaving. It's not a coincidence that he left when Austin Mack, the quarterback who redshirted at Washington last year, committed to Alabama. That happened. One happened one afternoon, and the other happened the next morning. So it makes sense how this is working. So you're going to have to deal with the initial part of it, but then you see how he recruits. We'll find out. We don't know if he's going to be able to recruit as well as Nick Saban. My guess is very few people can, not named Kirby Smart, but I do think, given his history, he's going to win. The question is, can he win the way Nick Saban won? The answer is probably no. Yeah. And how okay are they going to be with that if it's, you win 10 games a year and then some years you win 15 and win the national title, but you might not win 13 games every single year. That might not happen.
Yeah. Double-digit wins every year since his first one is truly incredible. I think you and I are fairly aligned there. I want to ask you one more question quickly since you brought up SI earlier. We saw over the weekend, Sports Illustrated, the publisher, laid off their entire staff there. It's kind of surprising news. The future's unclear. How did we get to this point with such an iconic brand, and what will be the future moving forward for Sports Illustrated?
Well, so I worked there for 11 years, and I left in 2019. And the day I left was when the group that currently runs it took over, or it was announced they were coming. I made sure I got out of there before they got there. Yeah. And because I knew they were going to run it into the ground, and it was very sad then. And it's just, the way they've run it has been kind of like an ATM. Like, we're just going to take some cash out of this thing, bleed it dry. And it sucks for the people who work there, because there's still a lot of really good people working there. They didn't actually lay everybody off. But the folks that are still just hanging in there and doing the best they can, I just feel bad for, because they're still doing really good work, but they've layered so much crap on top of it that they've really devalued the brand, and it's just sad to see.
Yeah, thanks for that perspective.
Yeah.
All right, Andy, we're going to get into the chat here. I know we don't have much time. We're going to start off with Christopher Jordan. He wants to know, is conference expansion good for the sports, in your opinion?
Well, I think if you got a bunch of like teams together, and really it was just teams that are really serious about football playing each other, I think that'd be great. I think not every school has to have big time football. Like, the schools that are charging their students like a $15 per credit hour athletics fee, and nobody actually cares about sports at those schools, like, they don't necessarily need to be in the FBS. They can be FCS schools, and nobody would shed a tear. And I think that's the part that everybody thinks that, just because your school's in the FBS, like everybody in the FBS should have a chance. No, everybody who's willing to put in the same amount of work and resources and money should have a chance. So maybe that number's 40, maybe that number's 50. I don't know what the number is, but that's who should be playing each other at the top. And then everybody, like schools should play like schools.
Yes.
And so a lot of schools in the MAC and the Conference USA do not belong in the same subdivision as the schools of the SEC and the Big Ten. They just don't. And the sooner everybody comes to that realization, the better off it is for everybody.
Yeah, well, I mean, we don't see, heavyweights fighting featherweights in UFC and boxing and stuff like that. I mean, I agree with you 100%. I will say when it comes to conference expansion, the big-time conferences are bringing in big-time teams. And when you bring in big-time teams, that's going to give us more big-time games. Right? I think you're going to see the SEC go to a 9-game in-conference schedule. So you're not losing the non-conference games that are huge. We're not losing Texas versus Alabama.
No,
we're gaining it.
They're getting rid of the games you didn't want to go to in the first place. And they did that on purpose because suddenly people weren't coming to games. Schools that sold out every game easily were struggling to sell tickets. And it's like, oh, maybe our schedules have gotten stale. And I think next year, when the new SEC schedule kicks in and the new Big Ten schedule kicks in, a lot of people are going to look back and realize, oh my God, they were serving up garbage for 20 years to us. Like these schedules sucked compared to what they are now.
Well, I mean, we had Jim Cavall on yesterday, and he was talking about how much more money college football will generate by getting rid of some of these schedules and having the big dogs all play each other, as opposed to the NFL and what they're bringing in, because the NFL still brings in a massive amount of more money than college football does. But you increase the revenue by having these better matchups. It's just
and just the timing of the television. Imagine holding your national championship instead of on a Monday night, which it never should be, on the Saturday night after that first round, basically of wild card NFL playoffs. Yeah. Take the 40, 50 million viewers you have in there, funnel them into the college national championships. You don't have a game at the same time.
That's one thing they kind of, and I've seen this floated that the NFL should buy the college super league, but I don't know that they necessarily have to be part of the same financial organization, but they should sort of work together because they already do kind of work together. Yeah. Like the NFL loves that college football provides all this free marketing for its players when they come in. Like they don't have to market their players because they're already famous. And that's a huge advantage. So I think that's exactly right. Like talk to the NFL and say, hey, let's work this out here. So you've got your Saturday of Super Wild Card weekend. And actually, I think it'd be the divisional Saturday now for the national championship game, which would work perfectly. You could go 1 p.m. kick, 4:30 p.m. kick. Those are your two NFL games. Right into the college football national championship.
God, best Saturday ever. Please.
I even think a great scenario would be if you wrapped up the college season before that, so you have your championship on New Year's Day, especially that. At least then you could start your playoff rounds right after the conference championship. But because they're not going to do that, at least give us this. Give us the championship on a Saturday night, which it should be. You've already played your NFL games during the day. Funnel all those millions of people already watching right into the college championship. Yeah. We're going to be in the NFL in the next year anyway, right?
We fixed it.
I shouldn't have to come to work on Tuesday.
That would be an incredible, just as from a viewership standpoint, an incredible day, because I will say something like watching the NFL games this past weekend, it was great, but not starting on Saturday till 4:30 Eastern time, I'm like, what do I do with the rest of my day?
Yeah, I'm over there watching Illinois play Rutgers in basketball, just like,
Sunday was perfect. This past Sunday, and it was one of the few times I've said that about the NFL. Starting the first game at, I think it was 2 p.m. Central for our time, right? Going right in, and the Chiefs-Bills game ended before 9 p.m., which we could go to sleep and come in at 4 a.m. and do our show. I was like, this is the perfect NFL football playoff day.
We should just do it.
It was the best.
We should just tell them
to do it ourselves. All right, Andy, you want to help us?
Andy, it's always so great to have you, my friend. Tell everybody where they can find your fantastic work. You guys at On3, absolutely killing it. Got a brand new building, too. Really excited for you guys over there in Shannon and everybody. But tell everybody where they can find your fantastic work, my friend.
So on3.com, the On3 Sports YouTube page. You can find me at Andy_Staples on Twitter and Instagram. And we got shows everywhere. You can find that. You can find my show daily, Sunday through Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central, on the On3 Sports YouTube page. Also on my Twitter feed. Pretty much everywhere. We're going to blast it into your brains eventually. Yes, we'll just, we'll chip you and we'll send it right there. And you'll be like, oh, I hate what you said about Michigan. How dare you? And
we do have Elon on the show.
Yeah, we do have Elon Musk actually on our show right now.
Sat down with Ben Shapiro yesterday. I'm here with you guys today. It's fun.
Yeah, it is. David's just a combination of every human ever born. Andy, we appreciate it, buddy. Thank you so much.
See you guys.
What's up, YouTube? Hey, do us a favor if you're stopping by. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and knock that out. We go live each weekday morning, 6:30 a.m. Central to 8 a.m. Central. If you can't catch us live, it stays on there forever, obviously. We appreciate your support. Grab some merch while you're at it.